welcome once again to another exciting session where the Bhakti Yoga starts. So we're going to get into the entire Bhakti part of it today. Right. So, Mataji, I think I have given the access, right? The co-host access. Do I need to give it to? Do we need to add anyone else? Mataji and Prabhuji?
No, we are only two for today.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mataji. Can you move this that side, please?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare
Hare.
Yes, so that was Brindastakam based on your request. Someone yesterday requested for the Tulsi prayers. So we tried to do the Brindastakam today. Tomorrow again, we will do the Tulsi Aarti as well. Right. So before we get into our sessions, let's have a quick recap of what we have learned yesterday. Yes, so we learned about Dhyana Yoga or the so-called Ashtanga Yoga. So should we have a quick recap while we wait for others to join as well? Maybe 3-4 minutes. We'll try to do a quick recap. Yes. So what did we learn yesterday? With your permission, I'm going to block the chats for now so that there is no distraction. So we'll open up the chats once we are done with the session. Yes. Does anyone want to give a brief as to what we have learned yesterday from the Bhakti Yoga part of it?
Yeah.
In terms of, Dhyana Yoga part of it. So we have learned so many Ashtanga. Ashtanga means the 8 limbs we have learned. And then we also yesterday learned who was the greatest of the yogis, because there were many questions in terms of the yoga ladder, which is better, the action is better or renunciation is better, right? Then we learned about the Ashtanga, how one will be able to control their mind and senses. And then we also saw that Chanchalam Himana Krishna, right? That's what Chanchalam Himana. So that's exactly what was explained by Lord Krishna, how the mind is so turbulent and so flickering and so on and so forth. Finally, we learned about who is the greatest of the yogis. The greatest of the yogis is one who's able to be himself or herself in a self-realized condition, who will be able to understand the what you call the confidential information, that he's not the body but he's the soul, right? Apart from that, the person should also be able to understand, this particular self-realized person should also be able to understand what is bhakti, true bhakti. We learned about the Navavidha bhakti process as well. Does anyone remember the Navavidha bhakti process?
Yes, Smarana.
Yes, Smaranam, Kirtanam,
Dasyam.
Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Very good.
Atmanivedam.
Yes. Anything else that we learned yesterday?
How to do chanting.
Yes, we learned how to do chanting. Why did we emphasize so much on chanting? Because chanting is the Yuga Dharma, right? As per the Bhagavatam, as per the verse, it is in Dwapar Yuga, there used to be temple worship, Kali Yuga different, and now in the, in Treta Yuga it was different, and now in the Kali Yuga it is what you call way too much of very simple, which is just Nama Sankirtana. All we have to do is chant on Nama Sankirtana. Then we touched, or rather we discussed in depth about how to do chanting, what is the time, place, circumstances, is there any particular time, place, circumstances on all. We saw that about chanting. And then we ended the session with what you call our Dhyana Yoga, and then we plan to enter into the so-called, now we are into the section. Remember we spoke about the jewel box. or the so-called sandwich, which we call it. Now we are in the middle part of it. That is, we are going to talk about the jewels now. Everything that we're going to talk here will be too good. So that is exactly what we are trying to establish here. So we saw way too much of Dhyana Yoga. Now we will get into the Bhakti Yoga part, where we will know the knowledge of the absolute. We have already done the knowledge of the absolute a while ago. If you remember, we learned the transcendental knowledge, which is on day 4, right? Bits and pieces we learned. Today in depth, we will know more about the Lord. Okay, so let me put forth our slide. Okay, are you people able to see my screen?
Yeah, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so with this, I'll take your permission to just mute so that there is no disturbance. In case there is any questions that you would want to ask in between, maybe you can raise your hands, but maybe we'll prefer the questions at the end of the session so that there is a flow in our discussions. But in between, wherever there is a requirement, I'll come back to you for discussions. Thank you so much. So yes, I've muted everyone. Okay, so before we get into our session, we'll offer our prayers to our gurus, our acharyas, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We'll take their shelter, and then we'll start our session. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Nilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurube Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we're going to learn from the book and the teachings by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, which is Bhagavad Gita as it is, without any additions or without any alterations. That's what our aim is to. And Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which is ISKCON. Right. So we started off with our chapters with the ultimate faith. We started off with observing the army, which was the first chapter. Then we saw there were arguments raised by Arjuna, which was then went into the mode of lamenting. And then finally, then he dropped his bow, cast aside, and then he started asking the questions. He did not want to fight. Then we learned in day 2 the importance of a guru, right? Krishna gave the jnana about the body and the soul. That's where we identified about the body as well as the soul, and we learned about the Sankhya Yoga, right? And then we also learned about the elements, how our body is made, little bit bits and pieces we learned. Today we will learn a little bit more, and then in the 13th chapter we will learn in depth. Now then we also learned about how to control the mind and senses, right? So we have been listening how to control our mind and senses right from Dwapara Yuga, right? So what do you call, what do I mean by Dwapara Yuga? So from that age onwards, we have been listening. So millennium ages onwards, we have been listening now, mind and senses, because at that time Arjuna was not able to control his mind and senses. Imagine we are in the age of Kali Yuga, right? And we are trying our level best to become a self-realized soul and trying to renounce doing our prescribed duties. Then we learned about Karma Yoga and the yoga ladders. We also learned about what is action and what is inaction, right? And how to be in action by being in action. That's called as inaction. And then we also learned about what is renunciation, and we also learned about what is the actual meaning of a renunciation. In the process, we learned who's a mithyachari, and then we also learned about what would happen if someone would do a dry renunciation or premature renunciation. Then Lord Krishna glorified the transcendental process, where we learned about Divya or divine, everything, the food that we eat, that is being offered to the Lord, anything and everything that is being offered to the Lord in His service, any action that we do, we termed it as a karma or Krishna karma. And that's how we established over there that Bhakti Yoga is the highest of all the yoga types. And then which is better, work done in devotion or renunciation of work? Again, he started asking questions, or Falgu Vairagya. That's what he started asking question, Arjuna, in the 5th chapter. And then we also learned about how to purify our body, mind, and senses without any desires. We saw how we need to focus with the Navavida Bhakti, right? That's exactly what we have seen. And then we also saw that the mind is an enemy of the friend, and the Ashtanga Yoga sections, right? Just give me a moment. Uh, okay, so we learned about how to control our body, mind, and senses without any desires. And then we also learned in the process LAG, right? Lust, anger, and greed. What happens when extreme desires of our lust is fulfilled? It turns into greed. And if it is not fulfilled, it turns into anger, right? And then yesterday we learned about mind. If mind can be an enemy or a friend, how can we deal with it? So we learned all these things. And what would happen to a successful yogi if he succeeds? And if he fails, what would happen? We saw that he will again take birth in an aristocratic family or in a Brahmana family, and so on and so forth. However, if he succeeds for a temporary time, he will reach the heavenly planets, which is again a part of the material world. So we saw so many things, we learned about so many things yesterday. And let's not worry that we are in this age of Kali Yuga. Well, from Dwapara Yuga, if Arjuna has been emphasizing this to Arjuna, sorry, Krishna has been emphasizing this to Arjuna. So imagine what is our plight. But we'll make every effort, we'll make all steps, and we will try to see how we can achieve towards perfection and plan our path to go back to Godhead. So in this chapter, what is the acronym? HEAD, which is a head, who's the head of everything and anything. Hearing from him, we will hear from him. Why is hearing that important? We will see that in the first 3 verses. And we will learn about Krishna, where he is everywhere and anywhere, right? Everywhere. Sarva Karana Karanam. That's what we will try to know about Krishna. How will that help us? Because he's the source of both all the material and the spiritual energies. And we will see how he is controlling not only the spiritual world, but also he's controlling the material world, that is Mahamaya or the Devi, right? We will see all that. And then in the next section, we're going to see how one would surrender and how one would not surrender. We will see the types of people over there. And finally, we will see what would happen to what would happen to the people who don't, who accept and who reject. And also we will learn today about demigods, which we were talking and waiting. We almost discussed a bit of demigods. So we have been giving clues in terms of what's going to happen in the upcoming classes here and there. So we have set the stage. So we discussed a bit of demigods. We will see elaborately about who are demigods in this. Now, how will this help us? By knowing this, it will give a proper knowledge. It will give a proper knowledge to people as to, it will increase our bhakti, first of all, to people who are already in bhakti. Once we get to know that this Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, our bhakti will be much more intense and we will surrender more. And for people who are not even ready in terms of surrendering to Krishna, it will start or ignite their bhakti. So this is the rationale or the idea behind our teachings in this short 18 days course. That's what we are planning to do. And we will also see today as to those who surrender to demigods, who are those people, and those who don't surrender, who are those people. We will try to see, and why these people are bewildered in this material world. We will see that. We have already learned about it, the term called as conditioned soul, because we are conditioned by the three gunas. Okay, moving on. This is the first verse where he says, hear from me, O Arjuna, please hear from me. Yes, Dash.
Shri Bhagavan Maya Shaktamana Partha Yogam Yunjam Madashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Jnasasi Tashrunu.
Right. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Right? We saw in the last chapter who's the best of the yogis. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. Right? We also saw bhajante mam. How does he doesn't worship, bhajante. Right? Always nitya, 24 hours he'll be thinking about the Lord. Right? Always think of Krishna, never forget Krishna. So that's exactly what we're going to continue here. Who's the highest of the yogis with that particular thought. This is a continuation or the link for that particular chapter. Right? Now, why is Krishna requesting Arjuna to hear? So here Krishna is going to talk about his material energies, his spiritual energies, and so on and so forth. And he will declare as to once a person tries to know about this knowledge, will be able to understand the clear tattva and will be able to understand the supreme potential energy, and then will be able to start what you call bhajante, which is start his devotional service to the Lord. Now, what exactly is Lord trying to emphasize here in this particular verse? That's what we need to understand. He's saying Tatshrunu. He's talking about Tatshrunu. What does it mean? He's saying, hear about Lord Krishna. Please listen about Lord Krishna. Samagram Mam. He's talking about the entire knowledge. Once you gain this knowledge, it will change our consciousness. Right? So this is exactly what Lord is telling, so that we develop our attachment to Lord Krishna. Right? We develop our attachment to Lord Krishna. What is the first step? He's saying, hear to me. So the first step is hearing, Shravanam, 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 which you all people are doing for the last 6 days. Today is the 7th day. First thing is hearing about the Lord, right? So that is exactly what he's saying. As and when you get to know, Maya Asakta Manapartha, Yogam Yunjim Madashraya, right? Jnashasi Tachrunu. That's exactly what he's saying. Hear about Lord Krishna. And once we hear about Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will understand his potential, his material, and his spiritual energies. And then he uses the word asamshayam. Why is he using the word asamshayam? Asamshayam means become free from all your doubts. You don't even have to worry. Become free from all your doubts. And then he says, Madashraya, take my shelter. Please take my shelter. Whoever wants to take the shelter, take my shelter. I'm going to give you this Divya Jnana, or the transcendental knowledge to you. Yogam Yunjam. Now, this is again one more term which says by practicing this yoga process. What is the practicing this? Which yoga process? Is it dhyana yoga, karma yoga? No, Lord is talking about the bhakti yoga. So does that mean in the other yogas there was no bhakti yoga? No, bhakti yoga was always there, right from when baby Prahlad, when he was born, that's what the bhakti yoga started off. The seed was started from there itself. So every yuga there was bhakti yoga. But the way they used to worship Lord, the way used to do the devotional service to the Lord, it was totally different. But in this particular yoga, we are preferring where the Lord has clearly come down and established that it is Nama Sankirtan is more than enough. Maya asaktamana, mind attached to me. We have been talking about mind, how the mind is so flickering. We have seen that. Chanchalam himana Krishna. So again, mind attached to me. This is what he has detailed explained. Now, one should understand, we have already learned in the second chapter where Lord is the absolute truth. What is absolute truth? Satyam param dhimahi, right? He's the supreme personality of Godhead. We know that he is the, what you call, Janmadasya, right? Janmadasya yato anvayad, right? He's there from Janma Adi Asya, everything, right from the inception. There is nothing called as inception, it's eternal time. And we also learned about our, what you call, that we are the body, we are the soul and not the body. And then we also learned about the three realizations. What are the three realizations? One is a Brahman realization, and the other one is a Paramatma realization, and the third one is a Bhagwan realization. Brahman and Paramatma realizations are like the partial realizations, and the person who is fully Sthita Pragya, or what you call a self-realized person or a greatest of the yogi, will be able to understand about Bhagwan, the personality of Godhead, which is the complete realization. And once a person is able to understand that, he will be able to elevate himself or herself to understand Lord. And that is why we saw all the different yoga processes, where we saw Jnana Yoga, where we saw Ashtanga Yoga, and we saw Bhakti Yoga. In Jnana Yoga, we saw that many of the devotees who are under the path of Jnana Yogas, like the Kumaras, they will try for the Brahman realization. In Ashtanga Yoga, basically they will try to meditate within, that is the Paramatma. They will try to connect within the localized Paramatma. However, Bhakti Yoga is totally different, where we will engage our 9 effective methods of the devotional service. And we will, the first thing that we will start is the most effective of the 9 devotional process. The first thing is Shravanam, right? That's exactly what we're going to talk about. And then we will be fixed in our devotional service. In Bhagavatam, it's very elaborately explained in the first canto, second chapter. It's very nicely elaborated that once you know about Lord. What was that particular verse? Shrinvatam swakatha Krishna punya shravana kirtanam ridyantasto hiya badrani vidhunoti suhritsatam. So what does it mean? So that is exactly, we are learning and hearing about it, Srinavatam. As and when we learn that, the next following verse comes into picture. What is the next verse, Darsh? Tada Rajas. I'm not able to recollect. Maybe you can pull that out. Ridyantasto hiya badrani vidhunoti shuhritsatam nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtuki tada rajastamo bhavaha kamalobha tayaschaya. So all our lobhas, so all our gunas, lobhas, all these things will be cleansed out. Then finally it will be Vidyante Hridaya Granthi, Chittante Sarva Samshaya, Kshiyante Chasya Karmani. That is exactly is the Falashruti of these particular shlokas, which we will learn in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is clearly explained by understanding or hearing about the Lord. Drishta Evatmanishware. Right.
Then you'll see the Supreme Personality.
Then we will be able to see and understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right, moving further, this we discussed in bits and pieces. Let's today discuss in detail. There are three ways of acquiring knowledge or understanding God. I'm sure most of you would have heard this from here and there from our lectures. If you have already tuned in or joined our what you call our sessions from Namanishta Das Prabhuji. 1 second, why is this not charging? Can you please connect it? It's okay. Right. So there are three types of acquiring the knowledge, which is pratyaksha pramana, that is direct sense perception, and then anumana pramana, which is the theories based on evidence, and then what is called the last one, which is the shabda pramana, the hearing from a bona fide authority. So let me try to involve us and try to understand a bit. For people who have heard this, what do you think is the best of the all? As per our Vedic injunction, it's clearly specified. What do you think is the best of the all? Does anyone want to? Yes, Dinesh Prabhuji.
To learn from Gurujis,
Why? Why do you think so?
because they are experienced person and they will clearly understand the depth of that.
They will clearly understand the depth of it. Okay, but I can see something which is right in front of me. What is tough for me to understand, Prabhu? So your answer is correct. Yes.
Praman.
Pratyaksha Praman is the best. Okay.
I think so.
Yes, Sri Vidya Mataji, you wanted to share something.
For me, it looks hearing from bona fide authority.
Hearing
But
from a
I'm-
bona fide.
Yes,
Hearing from
I'm
a
not
bona fide.
exactly able to say, like as the other
Okay.
person
let's-
said, it's going to be for, like you are more knowledge than like.
Okay. Okay. Because somebody is more knowledge, better we hear from a bona fide authority. Okay. Okay. So we'll get into the further.
I think,
Yes, please go ahead.
yeah, I think it is Shabda Pramana, hearing from a bona fide authority, because they'll have knowledge of the theories also, all the scriptures also, and they would have got all these knowledge from their ancestors or their
Shastra.
guru. So there would have been a
Shastras,
direct
basically.
perception as well as these scriptures, which we can learn from our bona fide masters. So I
Exactly.
think that's the best.
Probably the direct word to say is Shastras, you know better.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. With all your permission, again, I'll mute you all. So we will see that now. So if we see at this particular picture, which looks like that there are something jumbled up with some blocks, it is sort of an illusion, right? So if we see Pratyaksha Pramana, I'm looking at this picture, but I'm not able to make out, but these are straight lines if we see them, right? These are straight lines. So if you remember, we discussed about it. We are born with what? I hope we remember the elephant and the 6 blind men story, right? Let's again try to involve. Now that I have given a clue, I hope we all remember the elephant and the 6 blind men story. Okay, I'll take your silent as a yes. Yes, we know where
Yes,
each one of them have tried guessing as to how the elephant looks like. One gave some information like a snake or a whatever. All of us know this particular story. So everyone were like sort of assuming, and then they are trying to experience with their perceptions, and they were trying to give. Remember, we already established this. We already established that the conditioned soul or the jivas, right, in this particular material world, because in the material world we are conditioned soul with 4 defects. And what are the 4 defects? We have been repeating for the last 3 classes that we commit mistakes, right? We have imperfect senses. Our senses are imperfect. What we can see, we see the diameter of the sun is so small. While it is so far away, we still say that the diameter of the sun is so small. We do not know. Up to certain extent, only we can see certain objects because of certain wavelength, so on and so forth, right? And then we are always illusioned. We know the mirage and all that examples, right? And we have a propensity to cheat others because we commit mistakes and we have imperfect senses and we are illusioned. Finally, we end up cheating others. So The first one is ruled out. Pratyaksha pramana, direct sense perception, is ruled out. Anumana pramana, theories based on evidence. I can go on and on and make some examples and experiments, or we all can do that. I hope we know that in Vedic, Srila Prabhupada also gives a classic example. He calls it as a frog theory, right? It's called as a frog theory. Let me mute. Sorry for that. Okay, so we can do theories and theories and theories, and finally, with some assumptions and all that, with some evidence, we will say this was the rocks were made, then we were from monkeys, and so on and so forth, and finally, we will understand that that particular Anumana Pramana is also wrong. The best way, the ideal way, is the Shabda Pramana. Why Shabda Pramana is the best way? Srila Prabhupada again gives a classic example of saying, if a kid wants to know about who is his father, what would the person do? Directly will go and ask the mom, saying, yes, mama or mother, who is my actual dad? Rather than getting into all those experiments and so on and so forth. Very simple is the Shabda Pramana. Why Shabda Pramana? We established in the 4th chapter. What was the 4th chapter? 2nd verse. Evam parampara praptim imam rajarshayo viduhu. We saw all the what you call 4 sampradayas, and from how it came from Lord Krishna gave it to Brahmaji, and then it came down and finally to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then finally it ended up with Srila Prabhupada. So it's the as it is. We do not concoct any information, we do not add any information. Whatever is there in all the 108 what you call Upanishads, right, the 4 Vedas and then the Puranas, so on and so forth, the information is presented as it is without any personal benefit, right? We give our the entire principles are given as it is. The sutras are given here. So that is the importance of Shabda Praman. Now, why are we trying to learn? Because we are trying to hear about Lord Krishna, and we are trying to hear about Krishna from him, and we are trying to establish here so that our bhakti increases more. Right. So moving on. So how to gain perfect knowledge? Right. This is the 2nd verse. How to gain perfect knowledge? Jnanam teham
savijnanam
idam vakshyami aseshatah yajñatvaneha bhuyodnyaj jnatavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So till now we learned what is the greatest of the knowledge, that he is everything, sarva karana karanam, he is the cause of all causes. And we also learned that we are the anus and he is the vibhu. We are the tiny purusha and he is the param purusha. We are just the jiva, right? We are the atma and he is the paramatma. That was the greatest of the knowledge. But here we're going to learn about the sweetest of the knowledge, that is the numinous, the phenomenal and the numinous knowledge from this particular chapter. This is what we're going to learn. Okay, so moving on further. The 3rd verse, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam vedi tatvatah. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Right? Hardly one knows me in truth. Lord himself is establishing here. While we have seen the 9 processes of devotional service, we have discussed about everything. How many of us are following? Now we are on the path of following. So in the 2nd verse is clearly establishing the jnanam. What is the jnanam we learned? That we the body is the matter and we are the soul. Our soul is eternal. We are the eternal parts. Mamayvamsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashasthani indriyani kritisthani karshati. Right? This is what we have learned. It's clearly established, which we will learn about that verse further. So we learned Here we're going to learn the complete knowledge, which is a transcendental knowledge. Now, knowing this, after knowing the complete transcendental knowledge, do we need to know anything further? No. This will invoke all our senses, and it will truly develop a bhakti towards the Lord. It will give the bhakti towards the Lord. That's why he's talking about jnanam and vijnanam. What is a vijnanam? That is a knowledge about the spirit soul, right? And how our senses are perceived, and with our senses, how we can understand God. That is what we will learn from here, right? So this particular information we have already established, and the Lord chooses to give this information only to Arjuna based on two qualifications. I hope we all remember, devotees. I think we all remember, Prabhus and Matajis. He was the pure devotee of the Lord, and he was also a sakha, that is a friend. That's exactly why Lord chose to give him. And we all know that in this material world, right, as per this verse, in this material world, we have different grades of men, right? What are the different grades of men I'm talking about? Very few has this information about soul, super soul, right, about the supreme personality of Godhead and the absolute truth, which we are terming it again and again as the spiritual knowledge or the transcendental knowledge. And there are many, that's the reason I said very few and generally many people are interested in animalistic propensities. What are the animalistic propensities? They are not bothered about it. The animals also do eating, mating, sleeping, defending, eating, mating, sleeping, defending, right? And people also get into, remember we spoke while we were talking about the yoga ladders, we spoke about something called as animalistic people as well, right? So they follow under that category: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. They do not want to use their consciousness at all, neither they want to elevate. They don't want to come into, at least to the karma kanda section, at least to surrender to demigods, at least they do not want to. But here we will understanding the self, connecting it with our inner self, that is Paramatma, and then finally we knowing the complete information about Bhagwan realization through Bhakti Yoga. We will see that. Okay, moving further, how can we see and understand Krishna? Right, we can see and understand Krishna. Here Lord has clearly established about the material energy and the various energies in 7.4. This particular chapter is like all the chapters from now on is the most important and the most important chapters, because we will know completely about the Lord. Right, here he's again establishing Bhumirapo Nalo Vayu Khammam Mano Buddhireva Cha Ahankara iti Yamme Bhinna Prakriti Ashtadha. Ashtadha. What are these 8 elements? Let's try to understand. Ashtadha: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Right? These are the Pancha Mahabhuta. Right? These are the Pancha Mahabhuta. That's exactly what we are trying to understand, the sweetness and the greatness of the Lord here. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. We discussed this on day 2 in the when the Lord was explaining the Sankhya Yoga, where I said our body is made up of Pancha Mahabhuta, the material body. And we also discussed about mind, intelligence, and false ego with various examples. We spoke about the body of the chariot as well. These are called as the subtle elements. Do you see the picture here? I don't know if people are able to see the soul, which is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. What is Sat? Sat means eternate. It's always there, eternal, just like Lord is also eternal, Sat, Chit, and Ananda, right? Knowledge, full of knowledge and full of bliss, right? This is the soul. The soul has certain coverings. What are the coverings? You see here, the yellow one is the soul. It is covered with the subtle body. What is a subtle body? We have a mind, intelligence, and false ego. Then we have a gross body, which is earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Same is the same corresponding here. The second picture, for understanding better, we have added here. This is the soul, which has mind, intelligence, and ego. Now, for people to understand, what do you mean by, wait a minute, we know something called as ego as ahankara. Now, what is this false ego? Right? As we all know, ego means I, the self. Right? Aham, I'm talking about I have done this, I am that. So anything that is being used as a negative connotation is called as a false ego, right? I'm an engineer, right? I'm a doctor, I'm an actor, I'm an actress, I'm this, I'm that, right? So I'm specifying with my body. That's so. If the what is the correct way of doing it? The right way of doing it is I'm a soul, and the second part of it, the sweetest part of it, or the more confidential information is where I'm connecting it, saying I'm a soul who is a part and parcel of the Lord, Jivara Swarupaya Nityera Krishna Dasa, and I am always there to serve the Lord, and my constitution of my soul is to serve the Lord. That is exactly called as true ego. We have seen that in various information like Hanuman. Hanuman took his true ego and burnt entire Lanka. We know that story. Right. This is a little bit of information about yesterday. Someone was asking about Pradhana and Mahatattva. So I thought we will discuss about this. Don't worry. We will cover all these portions with the Goloka chart or with all this information maybe in the upcoming chapters as well. These are the Ashtadha or the 8 separated elements, that is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligent, and false ego, right? This is what we are trying to show here, how Lord as the creator and the originator of the entire universe and the universes of the total manifestation, how it is being explained here. So Lord Krishna, he expands, he has various plenary positions, he expands, right? The first expansion is of Balram, right? From there, that is the Swaamsha expansions, right? And we are the Vibhinnamsa expansions, and from there, from the Swaamsha expansion, again the Lord expands into the Chaturvyuha, right? He expands into the Chaturvyuha, which we will learn that later. And finally, again, he expands into the second Chaturvyuha, which is Pradyumna, Sankarshana, and so on and so forth. And from Shankarshana comes the Mahavishnu. These are all the Purusha incarnations, right? He takes into Purusha incarnations. The first expansion in the Purusha incarnations is the Karanodakshaya Vishnu. Let me check with you people if I'm giving too much of information. If I'm explaining too much, then I would want to stop. Yes, shall I continue with this or shall I stop if it is too much of information? Hare Krishna.
If it's fine.
Just please give a thumbs up if it's fine.
It's just that you're still to understand this. Otherwise, it's
Okay.
fine with whatever you decide.
Okay. So what I'm trying to establish here is we are trying to establish how the originator of the entire universe, the cause of all causes, how everything started off. Well, it's not a start, it's eternal, it's going on and on. So just assume or imagine for a moment that there was a annihilation, there was a complete annihilation, right? The entire yuga cycle was annihilated. What happens again? The Lord expands, right? From his Swamsha, he expands. What is the first expansion he takes? Into Balram, right? Who takes care of the entire spiritual world. From there, the next expansion is again the 4 expansions, the Chaturvyuha expansions. Finally, again, the second level of Chaturvyuha expansions. And finally, it comes the Mahavishnu. From Sankarshana, the Mahavishnu takes place. Mahavishnu is also called as the Karanodakshaya Vishnu. Now, what is Karanodakshaya Vishnu? What is his role? The Karanodakshaya Vishnu's role is creates total material energy, the Mahatattva. Now, what do I mean by material energy? He creates many universes, the matter and everything. And finally, from Mahavishnu then emerges something called as the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, right? What is the duty or the responsibility of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu? Garbhodakshaya Vishnu enters into each and every universe to create diversities. And then finally, there is another Vishnu who is the Paramatma, whom we know, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. So who's there right in our heart is the Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. The localized Vishnu who's there in our heart is the Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. And for the entire universe, who's there is the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. This is what we understand. So if you remember, whenever there are scriptures or wherever we are seeing movies or something, the lords or the demigods used to go to take seek shelter from whom? It was from the Shira Udaka. He used to sit in. He used to take rest in the Shira Udaka ocean, which is a milk ocean. That is where all the demigods used to take help from. So that's where he enters into every atom and maintain as a super soul. So this is what I was trying to explain. Do not worry, in case you are not able to understand, we will again talk about this later. So I thought it's good for me to explain. So that's exactly what I was trying to explain. So where does we come into picture? So he creates something called as the material world, Prakriti. So this is exactly the Lord creates as a material world, as a Prakriti, where we are all temporary. The 8 elements comes into picture. Apart from the 8 elements, we will have something called as from these 8, from our senses, these are sense acquiring objects. So we have 5 elements, Panchamahabhuta, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Similarly, we have 5 senses, right? So it became 10 now. 10 plus 3, these 3 subtle elements, which is mind, intelligence, false ego. Similarly, with these 5 senses, we will be able to understand Shabda, Sparsha, Rasa, Rupa, Gandha, which is the form, the taste, the touch, the sound, and the smell. So these are the objects of senses. So totally 5 plus this 5 plus 5, 15. And if you're not able to understand, don't worry. Then we have something called as a working senses. What are the working senses? Hands, legs, voice, right? Anus and genitals. Like that, we have 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, which is like 20. And then we have this 3, which are 23 entire elements. This entire 23 elements are called as Mahat Tattva. The reason why I'm explaining this is because yesterday somebody asked about Mahat Tattva. So this is the entire total material world, or the material substance is created. These are in the inactive form. When the Lord glances at Mahamaya, that is the Devi, through the agency of Shambhu, that is Lord Shiva, that is how he impregnates. We will see that in the next verse. Let's try to understand. That's how the entire material becomes active, and that is where the Pradhana comes into picture. Yesterday, someone was asking about Pradhana. That's a very beautiful purport. You can read that purport. You will get the same explanation, which I just explained a while ago. Right. This is exactly what we just learned about the separated energies, the 7.5, the Jiva. Apareyam mitastvanyam prakritim vidhime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharayate jagat. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Right? The material world is an inferior nature. So what are we doing? We are exploiting the resources of this material world. Right? God has created a quota system for everyone, but no, what we want more. Right? How much ever we can extrapolate, we want more. So we need to understand this way. Let me give you a gist of it. I do not want to confuse. Krishna has certain Shaktis, or the so-called energies, because he's the source of the origin and the annihilation, or the so-called dissolution, which we call it. So he has something called as the internal energy, right? And he has something called as the external energy. Always remember, internal energy, external energy. The internal energy corresponds to where he stays. Goloka Vrindavan, which is a spiritual world. So that is called as the internal or the superior energy. And where are we staying? We are in the material world, which is the Bahiranga energy, or the external energy, right? And when we termed the spiritual world is internal energy, so it is superior energy, and the external energy is the inferior energy, right? Then you might think, wait a minute, but we are also eternal jivas, right? So we are in between the spiritual world, and we are also in the material world, because we are the jivas, a part and parcel of the Lord. We are called as the tatastha energy, or the marginal energy. We are in between, right? So if Lord is called as Satchit Ananda, we are also called as Satchit Ananda. But however we are in the material world, we are conditioned by the three modes of material nature. We have a gross body and we have our subtle senses, but the Lord doesn't know that. But the Lord doesn't have it. He knows every one of us. He knows about him. He knows about us. He knows about every living entity, but we do not know about us very well. So that is what I wanted to explain about the Lord's energies. Moving on further, right, this was the Krishna is the source of origin. Etad yonini bhutani sarvaniti upadharaya aham krishnasya jagatah prabhavah pralayasthatha. This is what I said, the origin and the dissolution. All created beings have their source in these two natures. What are the two natures? The spiritual world and the material world. He takes care of everything. Of all that is material and all that is spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. Moving on, Krishna is the maintainer and essential principle. Mata parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam protam sutre manigana iva. Sutre manigana iva. So everything and anything are like a necklace or a pearls that are tied to a what you call a necklace. If we see in a necklace or a chain, everything is like all the pearls are attached, but are we able to see the thread? We will not be able to see the thread. So he's trying to say that he's the thread for everything. He's holding on to all the planets, all the universes and everything. And he's the maintainer and he's essential principle. So, oh conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. That is what Lord is trying to establish here in this particular verse as well. Right? What is the understanding of this particular verse? We will be able to understand the absolute truth very well with this. There will not be any more arguments at all, because this is there from the Upanishads. The information is given that there is no other superior truth than this. In Brahma Samhita also it's clearly ascertained or established. Ishvara, Parama, Krishna, Satchitananda Vigraha, everything and anything is clearly mentioned there. Ishvara, Parama, Krishna, right? All those. So whatever impersonalists or Mayavadis are giving us information, that all those arguments can be defeated with this particular verse. Right. Then we will move on to the next slide to understand further. Rasoham apsu kaunteya prabhasmi sasishurayo pranavah sarva vedeshu shabdah ke paurusham rishu. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I am the sound in the ether and the ability in man. So he's explaining, I am everything. Remember yesterday, one of our Matajis was trying to say, Prabhu, I'm able to experience Lord in everything, in the sun, in the moon, in the plants, in the trees, wherever I see him around. And when I'm sleeping, I see that Lord's feet is on my pillow. Is that good? Excellent. So there you go. Yesterday we were saying, Mataji, you have already understood the next chapter. So Lord is trying to establish here everything. He's already establishing here. He's the taste of water. But we have learned with our knowledge that the water doesn't have any taste. It is blank. But he is the taste of water. And he's the taste of this everything, be it the sea water, any water, he's the taste of water. Right? It depends on how the attraction depends on the purity of the water. Similarly, he also establishes he is the light of the sun and moon. How? The Brahman effulgence. The sun and the moon are getting the light from the Brahman effulgence. And he's the Om of the Vedic mantras. We have already discussed about this. Om, the Supreme Lord, beginning of any and every Vedic hymn. Whenever we chant, every verse starts with Om, right? He's the sound of ether, and he's also the ability of the man. Moving further, we will see in the verses from 8 to 11, all these things are there. What is he and what among? So he's the taste of the water. He's the light of the moon and sun. He's the Om of the Vedic mantras, which we saw. He's the sound of ether. He's the sound, or he's the ability in a man. right? He is the fragrance of the earth, the punya, whatever we call it, the fragrance of the earth. He is the heat. He's the what do you call, in the fire, right? The digestive fire. He's there in the form of a fire in our body. You might wonder, how is that possible? He takes care of the digestive juices. It's not the liver or the stomach or any of the pancreas or those acidic juices which is digesting, but the term that is being used is vibhavasho. He is there as a vibhavasho. He is the heat of the fire. He's there, be it factories or cooking or digestive fire. He's there within us who digest. If we touch a body, we will understand the body maintains a particular temperature, right? So this is, everything is there. So if there is an indigestion in our body, we understand that there is a variation in the temperature of our body, right? He's the life of all living beings. He's the fragrance of earth. Why fragrance of earth? The first time when what you call, he's so uncontaminated, the original flavor of the smell, when first time it's rained, which is called as a punya, also means that which is not decomposed. Punya means which is not decomposed. That's what we are trying to establish here, right? Then he's the original seed of all existences. He's the intelligence in the intelligent man, and he's the prowess in the all-powerful man, and he's the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. He's the sex life, not contrary to religious principles. So we can see Krishna everywhere, exactly like the way Mataji was saying, I can see him everywhere, Prabhu. Yes, this is exactly what we are trying to say. I think one of the Prabhujis was also saying, seeing Krishna everywhere. What happened? Okay, seeing Krishna everywhere, 8 to 11, this is what we learned. Know that all the states of being, be they of goodness, passion, or ignorance, in any of the modes who are manifested by my energy. I am, in one sense, everything, but I am independent. I am not under the modes of the material nature, right? But he controls the modes of the material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. We have already learned that. Then Arjuna pondered for a moment. Oh, is it so? We are still illusioned due to our gross senses. This is what Arjuna started pondering. We are illusioned with our gross senses. Remember, we have four defects. We are born with 4 defects. So Krishna's magic spell, that's how he does it. How does he do it? Deluded by the 3 modes, which is goodness, passion, and ignorance. Why are we deluded? Because we are a conditioned soul, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Why? Because of our free will, we wanted to enjoy away from the Lord. The whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Because we are a conditioned soul, we do not want to surrender to the Lord, and we are conditioned and deluded by the 3 modes, that is goodness, passion, and ignorance. We do not understand the Lord at all. That is what Lord is trying to explain here. But those who surrender to the Lord with full faith, and those who are who will do their bhakti yoga on their path with dedication, with full faith, they can cross over these particular modes as well, right? Otherwise it is very tough. That's exactly why we yesterday learned who's the greatest of the yogi. The greatest of the yogi is somebody who are able to control their senses, control their mind, utilize their intelligence, and they will not act within their dualities. For them, happiness, sadness, anything and everything is perfectly fine. Just give me a moment. I don't know why this is not charging. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why my laptop was not charging, so I was trying to connect it, but let's see if it works. No, it's still not charging. Just try meanwhile. Okay. So we were talking about being deluded by the modes. What will the result of being one is completely in delusion? They will forget about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's beyond all the modes, right? They will not even understand who is he and how he's controlling the entire material energy. That's what we are trying to understand here. Okay, so we'll move on further to understand. Yeah, so how do we overcome this particular illusion? Let's try to see here. We will overcome this illusion by taking the Lord's shelter. How do we take his shelter? We already know how do we take his shelter, by Bhakti Yoga. So here he says, please take my shelter. Daivihesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, Arjuna. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. That's what we learned, that he's also Satchitananda, we are also Satchitananda. Unless and until we take shelter of the Lord, we will not be able to cross over this three modes or the clutches of the Mahamaya. Yes, let's try to understand the four kinds of people which I have already hinted. Artha, Artharthi, Jnani, Jignasu. We will try to learn them today in detail. Four kinds of people who do not surrender. These are the people who do not want to surrender no matter what. What are they called? We will see them. Namam dushkriti no mudha prapadyante naradhama. They are called as mudhas, naradhamas. Maya aparata jnana asurim bhavim ashritah. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, right? Mudhas, grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind. Who are the lowest among mankind? Naradhamas, and whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. What do you mean by knowledge is stolen by illusion? Every time their knowledge, no matter what you give them, the references of the Shastras, the evidences of the Shastras, how much ever, they will come up with something or the other with their defective senses or those four defects. That's why it's stolen by illusion. And who partake of the atheistic nature of the demons, they do not surrender unto me. That is exactly what Lord is trying to establish again and again in this particular verse, right? Because they do not want to get freed from the clutches of the Maya. That is exactly, they are so impious, or the so-called mudhas, and what we call Srila Prabhupada says here, the donkey-like men, right? They're so foolish, or the naradhamas are the lowest of the mankind, and they do not want to, no matter what. They are so grossly foolish. They are like, they are called as the, we will see in the next slide. Let's see in the next slide. Grossly foolish, hardworking ass. That's what it's termed as. Naradhama, uncivilized people, considered lowest of the mankind. And Maya Paharata Jnana, misled intellectuals of the society. Asurim Bhavam, Ashritaha, the demoniac natured people. These are the people who, no matter what, they do not want to surrender. But remember, yesterday we said, no matter what, there will be a time they have to surrender. No matter what, they have to surrender. But they would want to enjoy by taking births, right? 84 lakh species, they will enjoy. They will go into that Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, right? Janarapi Maranam. They would want to just go on and on and on. Who are the four kinds of pious people who surrender? These are the people who surrender. Let's see the reasons why they surrender. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jnana sukritino arjuna artho jignasur artharthi jnani. Artho jignasu artharthi jnani cha bharatarshabha. O best among the Bharatas, four kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me. And who are they? The distressed, right? The desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. These are the people who take shelter of the Lord and they surrender to the Lord, which we already know. Artha, the distressed one. Who was the distressed one? I hope we remember. Gajendra, who was in extreme distress. And then he called out somehow, or the Gajendra, the elephant, right? And then finally he called out, remembered about the Lord. Immediately the Lord came on his Vahan. Artha Artharthi, the desirous of wealth. Who was that? The desirous of wealth. One classic example is our Dhruv Maharaj, because yesterday we read the story of Dhruv Maharaj, because he was desiring for wealth, because his stepmom did not allow him to sit on the lap of his dad. So they had a lot of wealth. So he went out in search of Narada, and based on Narada Muni's teachings, instructions, immediately he started praying the Lord, desirous of wealth. Jignasu, the curious, the four Kumaras, right? And the Jnani, the one in the search of the knowledge. These are the people who surrender to the Lord. We can think for a moment, and then we can think we fall under which category, right? Okay, this was the example which we were talking about. The Gajendra, the Gajendra, the elephant. Immediately, Lord, he surrendered to the Lord after many years in that severe pain when he was bitten by a crocodile. And then the second one is about when he, what you call, Dussasana, who was disrobing Draupadi. And then whom do we have here? Sukadev Goswami over here, right? Who got the instructions. Same here, we have the same information. Then this was Dhruv Maharaj. He was touched with the transcendental conch shell of the Lord, and then he was enlightened. Then we have certain yajnas where Sugriva performed. And then this was Naimisharanya forest, right? The Jnanis who are in search of the knowledge. This is a Naimisharanya forest where they have assembled of their morning, what we call kriyas, or for the prayers. They have sat to listen to the Sukadev Goswami here. Okay, moving on. The 17th verse, the best among the men, but who of all them, out of these four who do not surrender and the four who surrender, who's the best of the men? Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best, for I'm very dear to him and he is very dear to me, right? Jnanino artham aham samama priya. That's what Lord is establishing here. So, and this is one of the favorite verses which what you call Prabhupada would have explained many times. Pure devotion is very rare. Why? Bahunam janmanamante jnanavam mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare, right? But all you people are going through this particular course, and we are going through this particular course sitting here and understanding the tattva about the Lord, the transcendental knowledge. So this is exactly what we are trying to understand about the transcendental knowledge of the Lord. So it means, does that mean we have come through many births and deaths? Yes, we have come through many births. Bahunam janmanamante. That is exactly how we have come through. I see that there are some participants who have raised their hands. Not sure. Both are Realme 5 and Galaxy, so I don't know how to address. Yes. Okay, Prabhuji, you can, Prabhuji or Mataji, whoever is in Galaxy A51 and Realme 3 Pro.
Jai Shri Krishna Prabhuji. I wanted to ask, what is ether?
Sorry,
Ether.
what is?
Ether.
Ether.
Okay, ether is a medium, it's like a vacuum. If at all you're able to hear when somebody is speaking, it's a medium where you will be able to listen to a sound. It's like a vacuum. It's a ether.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So we'll go to the slides here. Okay, so then again, Arjuna started pondering. So what about other devatas such as Brahma, Shiva? Can you please explain about them as well? Krishna, Arjuna is trying to ask. Who are they? What is their role? Can you please help us? So why doesn't everybody take shelter of Krishna? So those who are intelligence has those whose intelligence has been stolen by the material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. And why do they surrender to the demigods? For their material desires. Why? Because their intelligence is lost and they look for quick results. Does it mean that if we pray Lord Krishna, he will not give these material desires? Definitely he will give. Definitely you ask him, he will give. That's the biggest secret. We think that he will not give, but when he is giving it, he will filter it. For example, just like when we go to, when a child goes to a particular shop and gives him some money and says, sir or ma'am, I need the sweet. Can you give me the sweet? The vendor or the sweet seller will not even think what is the condition of the child. He will just try to remove the sweet and offer it to the kid, right? However, the mom, the same thing that's being asked to the parent knows the condition of the child, whether the child has any allergy conditions or has any stomach problems. They'll filter. Similarly, Lord Krishna filters it. What do I mean by filter? He purifies us. He purifies our consciousness. He purifies our soul. And that's how our desires are given. Okay, moving on. How Lord facilitates demigod worship. I'm in everyone's heart as a super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. At least if you're not praying me, he's the one who's instilling the faith, empowering the demigods as well. He's the one who has done it. We will see that in terms of how he has given different responsibilities to each and every demigod. Right, all these things which we see, Saraswati and so on and so forth here, right, Hanumanji and Kubera and so on and so on and so forth. Everything, whatever goddess we are asking for, where we go and surrender to these demigods, are all given here. And if we see here, Lord is the one who is giving or instilling or empowering all these demigods, so that at least surrender to the demigods. Moving on, what is a problem in approaching the demigods? Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desires. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone, because demigods cannot give benedictions without permission of the Supreme Lord. I hope you are aware of the stories, what happened to this particular story in the picture, where Lord Shiva gave all his boon to who was this? Bhasmasura.
Yeah.
Right? So Bhasmasura, and finally, what happened? He said, "Okay, let me try whatever you have given to me on you first." Right? He ran behind him. Then finally, Lord Shiva ran, saying, "Oh, if I touch your head, I'm going to die." So Bhasmasura wanted to test that. Finally, no one would able to save. Finally, Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna came in the form of a Brahmana, and he said, "Wait a minute, what are you trying to do?" As a small kid, he came in, right, and said, "What are you trying to do? How sure are you whether you got the right bone? Why don't you try it on yourself? Put it on your head and try whether whatever bone you have got is correct or not." And that's how we know the rest of the story, what happened to Bhasmasura. So while they give the benedictions, which are immediate, as we just learned here, and what you call temporary, but they do not know how to purify our consciousness, right? The best way is we need to purify our consciousness, and we need to get a permanent solution to our problems, not a temporary solution to our problems. That's what we are trying to establish here. Why demigod worshippers are called men of less intelligence, right? It is not we who are talking about it. We are talking about, we are referring here in, it's written in the Gita, the Lord himself says this: "Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet." So this is a particular verse which will again come, "Yanti devo vata devan pitrin yanti pitrivata." So whoever are praying the bhutas, and they will go over there. Whoever are praying to the demigods, they'll go to that planets. But whoever prays me will ultimately reach my supreme planet. unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature at all, which is imperishable and supreme. Why? Because of their ignorance of Krishna's supremacy. They do not know. So these are the four kinds of men: Artha, Artharthi, Gyani, and Jignashu. We just saw that. Why doesn't everybody take shelter of Krishna then? I'm never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I'm covered by my internal potency. Right? Here we are covered by Mahamaya, and there is something called as Yogamaya. His own mom was also covered with the Yogamaya potency, but she was the greatest of the devotees. She used to love. But when he opened his mouth, when he showed his Vishwarupa still, she was, for a moment, she was like covered by the Yogamaya potency. And therefore, they do not know that I'm unborn and infallible. Moving on. Oh, Arjuna, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is going to happen, all that is happening in the present, and all the things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me, no one knows. Why? Because of the ignorance and delusion, because we are in the material world, conditioned soul. What is the understanding of a pure devotee then? The persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion. What are dualities? Happiness, sadness, right? All those dualities are freed from the delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. From delusion to devotional service. If we see here, Mrigari the hunter, who used to kill animals and half dead, finally he got a boon, or he was blessed with Narada, right? And finally he turned into devotional service in such a way that he was not ready to stamp the ants as well. He could understand Pandita Samadarshana, right? He was able to see Paramatma in every living entity. So that is how Bahunam Janmanam Ante, he was merciful, or the Lord was so merciful, he sent the Guru through him, and after many, many births, that's how he was delivered. So what is the understanding of a pure devotee? Those in full consciousness of me, who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of all the material manifestation of these demigods and all of the methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death. For them, there is no confusion, there is no question in their mind, because they know completely who is Lord. For them, they do not have a tinge of question in their mind, because they are in complete faith and they have already surrendered. They know who is the owner, who's the origin and dissolution of the spiritual as well as the material world. They have the perfect knowledge. They know that demigods, all living entities, are parts and parcels. We all are parts and parcels of the Lord, and we are perishable. And however, our souls are eternal. That's exactly how they know everything. So they know the what we call their attitude, and that's exactly how they understand a pure devotee. Remember how one talks, how one walks. We already learned that particular words in the previous chapters as well. So they know who's the Brahma, then Brahman, and they know who's the Paramatma, and also they know who is the Bhagavan. This is how they will be able to understand the Lord clearly, becoming free and becoming pious. That's how they are pure. These intelligent persons, they are freed from all the dualities, is what we have learned now. I think with this, we will be able to close this with the next verse, or close it over here with our Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai. Thank you so much, everyone, for being patient and listening. I think I have exceeded almost like 10, 15 minutes. Sorry for that. I thought maybe a little bit of more explanation is required. That's exactly why we exceeded. Okay, so let's get into our question and answer session right now.